Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're hailing from. Welcome to the Developer Experience Office Hours here on OpenShift TV. I am Chris Short, executive producer of OpenShift TV. I am joined today by a bevy of my fellow Red Hatters that are in the developer experience and advocacy realms. But the most important of them all, figuratively, is Serena from the future, Nichols, which your name is different again. It's
I
Zoom.
know.
Zoom, come on, fix her name. Help us help her, Zoom. Come on. Serena from the future is here with us, which means, as always, everybody, that the things that you see on this show might not end up in the product in the way that you see them, or at all, or in some different product or some project somewhere that we just create an operator for. Who knows? It's all in the future, and we don't know what the future always ends up looking like in the end. Serena, would you like to introduce yourself to everybody?
Sure. Hey, my name's Serena Nichols, better known as Serena from the Future, as Chris just said. I'm a product manager for the OpenShift developer tooling area, and see you guys every 2 or 3 weeks here on the Developer Experience Office Hours. So glad to be here.
Next up, Ryan. How about that?
All right, let's see if my mic's working. Hey, I'm Ryan Jarvinen. You can find me online as Ryan J most places. I'm a developer advocate with the OpenShift DevRel team. Make sure during this session to drop any questions you have into the chat, and we'll do our best to catch up with them.
Yeah, I'll touch base on the feedback bit after we do the intros. Brian, you're up next in the round the horn here.
Hey, yeah, Brian Tanis. I'm on the same team as Ryan. So I'm a developer advocate focusing on OpenShift. And yeah, we should have a pretty awesome session today, talk about some cool stuff.
Agreed. And then last but certainly not least, the one and only Peter, can't say your last name.
Kreuzer, it's all good. Hey, I'm Peter Kreuzer. I'm a UX designer on OpenShift. I primarily focus on operator-related screens and also QA and security-related screens. So glad to be here.
Awesome. This is going to be a very cool show, everybody. Serena just lost video for somehow, but the whole premise behind today's show, Serena, is to get feedback from y'all about what you would like to see from the developer view, right? Like as a developer, what would you like to see in OpenShift? And some of the things we're showing you today, we want your feedback on. So Serena, do you have a form that we could give out to folks so they could provide us feedback as we're going along here?
I do. I'm going to put this in the chat a few times.
Awesome.
So
Thank
there
you.
is a survey that you can just add some feedback there. You got a couple questions. All of it's optional, so whatever you're
like
interested in
opt in,
providing.
opt out. Don't you know? You're not
Exactly.
required to do it, but we really appreciate your feedback. It does get baked into the product from this show. Like we use feedback from this show to help us make this product better. So yeah, we are all about you right now. So what do we got on tap today? It's something fancy, I hear.
Yeah, so today we're going to be talking about security vulnerabilities. So, you know, from a developer perspective, have you ever wanted to view vulnerabilities in your application stack? We are going to talk about in the future, post 4.6, things that we are looking into. But I think first, we also want to kind of step back a bit and say, today, you know, there is a security container security operator that already provides base image and mid-stack analysis to admins. So what we're now trying to do on the developer side is bring that same information as well as adding vulnerabilities in the application dependencies to the developers and the developer perspective. So in the future, when that operator is enabled, we want to allow the developers the ability to view the vulnerabilities across all their container images within a specific project. But some of the things that we're seeing is like, so Peter's got a great set of designs that he's come up with an end-to-end flow of where you might want to see things and how you might want to look at things through the developer perspective. But I think one of the other things we want to do in addition to kind of look at those designs is also take a step back and see like, what are the requirements or what is the use cases from the developer's perspective? And making sure that we're meeting those, I guess, through these designs.
Yeah,
So
we got to make people happy, right? Like we're trying to ease the workflow here, right? Like technology exists to make human life better, not harder.
Right. And I think and Peter will talk through a lot of this, but I think one of the interesting pieces is that a lot of the times the vulnerabilities that you have might be aligned with a base image, which is something that as the developer, you can't fix, right?
Right.
Um, so how much of that information do you want to see versus, what you can fix versus what you can't fix? And those type of questions and topics are the things I think that Peter really wants to get more detailed info on. So I will pass it off to Peter so he can share the proposed future designs. And as we always say, Peter, we don't know that it will come through into the product this way or at all, but we'd love to get feedback. So I'm going to pass over to you.
Awesome.
Awesome. Thanks. So I figured I'd start by showing what's in the container security operator today. I think some of the functionality I'm showing is added as early as I think 4.3 and then also in 4.4. So I figure I'll touch on that and then also show how to set that up in your cluster. But just to start, so this particular cluster we're looking at here, just to mention, so this has the Quay container security operator already installed. So that's why it has this functionality available. So some things I want to highlight that enables is I'm now over in the administrator view on the cluster dashboard, we call it. And there's this image vulnerability status here. And what that status does today is it gives you an overview of any vulnerable container images that are on your cluster today. And what's worth noting so far is that these are all, as Serena mentioned, in the base images. So it mentions those, it mentions how many namespaces they impact. It also mentions how many of the vulnerabilities in that container image are fixable. So you can drill down just to view one of these, or you can view all of them in a list, which I'll go ahead and do. And that switches you over to this list of these resources, the image manifest vulnerabilities. And each one of these represents a scan of a container image and then a set of vulnerabilities also. And each of these also contains a link to the Quay image registry or container registry where you can see it. So you can also go over there if you would want to see it in the Quay.io UI. But going back to the OCP console, if we take a look at one of these, so in the details, there's a summary for this particular one. So you can see there's 95 vulnerabilities here. It breaks them down by severity. There's a little metadata here, and then it lists out all these vulnerabilities. So it tells you what packages are affected, the current version you have, and then when that vulnerability is fixed and in which version. And you can also link out to the Red Hat Security Advisory to get more information about that particular vulnerability. So that's sort of the baseline of what we have today. As I said, I think this is in 4.3 and 4.4. This feature was available, and so now we're looking forward to in the future what we can do to further enable a developer to get more insight into also these base images, but also the app dependency vulnerabilities that they might be more interested in.
So Peter, one quick question. So with this, to be able to see this information, we need to have Quay and Claire set up in our environment as well, or do we just get this with OpenShift? Is one of the questions that we're getting in the chat.
So these would be images that are coming from, I kind of glossed over that. Thanks for that question.
Yeah.
So any image that comes from Quay is what's being analyzed here. So Claire is already running. So any image, basically that's kind of the prerequisite, is that these images have to come from Quay. So we sort of tried to highlight that in the popover, just so you're not under the impression that absolutely every image on your cluster is being scanned in this way, if that answers the question.
Yeah, perfect. So yeah, we have to have Quay set up and talking to OpenShift to be able to get this kind of information. I think that there's also maybe a possibility, there's maybe some partners that are giving some information using this container security operator, I think.
I think it is designed to support any container registry. I don't know if this is true, so don't hold me to this, but Quay might be the only one taking advantage of it at this time, but I think more absolutely can and may be in the process of doing so.
Cool.
Awesome.
When you say Quay, does that include Quay Enterprise as an option for people that don't want to use the hosted Quay for one reason or another?
I believe so, yeah. But again, don't hold me to that. I can confirm that, but I'm pretty sure.
Cool. Yeah. Nice to see Claire being used and having it fully automated. Claire is open source, so you could also access some of this information by using Claire directly via the command line or some other means, and then splicing it back in. But this is really cool to have it all fully integrated and ready to go. Cool to see this.
Awesome. Yeah. Yeah. It's just sort of like a one-stop shop, and maybe you can get the same information that you could otherwise get access to, but maybe surface at a little higher level.
Yeah, and saves me from having to build a UI to expose it to the folks that need access to it. So yeah, I was just not trying to downplay the value here, more just trying to highlight that part of what's being used under the scenes or behind the scenes is the Claire binary, and some of that is open source work that you can look up on your own if you're interested in how that operates. But yeah, really cool to see it fully integrated and displayed to users directly in the dashboard.
And just, I've added a couple of blogs into the chat too for anybody who's interested in looking. They're aligned with some of the 4.3 and 4.4 features that were added around this.
So how would it work with a like private self-hosted registry, right? Like would I have to just tell Claire, like go search that registry too, or is there a webhook that I have to do from the registry to Claire? Just out of curiosity. Or actually Narendev's asking, but yeah.
I believe it's I don't know if this actually answers the question, but I believe it's once you use an image from that private registry, if that's what you asked, that it would be surfaced here. To be honest with you, I don't think I absolutely know the answer to that question, but I could.
And that's fair. Yeah. We can figure that out.
But yeah, if there aren't any other comments
that's
on this,
it.
maybe
Please continue. Yeah.
All right, yeah, we'll segue into the future stuff.
You caught on quick, the future.
So now we're in the realm of future. So even I forgot that I have this stamp up here, design concept, not for implementation. So that might even give you a sense of just how early this is. But just to set this up now, we are over in the developer perspective in the console, and we're over on the project tab. So we're looking at this one particular project called Andrew. And what's new here is this status that, similar to what we just looked at on the cluster dashboard for an admin, is the image vulnerability status. And there's also this vulnerabilities tab, which would have the complete list of vulnerable images for this particular project. But to take a look at this popover, this is definitely where I'm interested in getting any feedback on. So please let it rip. You won't hurt my feelings.
So can I give you a feedback?
Absolutely.
Red, orange, yellow is the colors I'm seeing. Have you tested that with anybody else colorblind?
Yeah, that's an extremely good point. Yeah, and something that we're on. Yeah, these are definitely absolutely not accessible in icons at this point. So we're working on a new set of icons that represent severity universally.
Right.
Some of the ones we're working on kind of look like maybe like a battery charging. So like it's like nuggets that fill, so you can visibly tell without color what the severity level is. But that's a great point. So I appreciate that. I'm definitely open to any feedback like that.
Yeah, like that's why we have the feedback form out there for you all, is to give us that kind of feedback, right? Like any feedback is good feedback. Like even if you're like, oh, I hate the fact that it says the image container ID and not the image name. Well, okay, that's good info to have, right? Like we want that.
Yeah, exactly. That's precisely what we're looking for. But yeah, so just to compare this to what we were looking at the cluster level, of note is that this is only in one project. So there's no, whereas at the cluster level is saying how many namespaces these particular container images appeared on and were vulnerable in. So we don't have that. We just have they're vulnerable in this project. So as you mentioned, we're just showing the ID here. And that was something we were curious about, exactly how to represent these that would be most useful, whether the ID actually is useful or not. But yeah, so just to break it down. So similarly, it has the severity for each one. You can see it says there's 12 vulnerable containers, and that's what the 12 is here. There's a breakdown by severity. And then there's the fixable container images, and then it mentions that there's 9 of those. So that's to say that 9 of those 12 have vulnerabilities in them that you could actually fix. So those are what are then listed out here. And there's also an option just to view all the vulnerable container images, which would switch you over to this vulnerabilities tab, which we'll take a look at momentarily. And then we still have the link out to the Quay.io interface. So I think this works. So I'll click this just to show that you'd still be able to be linked out here. And at this level, we're thinking that both those base level and app dependency vulnerabilities would appear here as well. So maybe that's the most key thing that probably I haven't actually said aloud, is that not only are we showing the base image vulnerabilities here, but also the app dependency vulnerabilities here, which maybe would be more interesting to a developer because that's something you can act on. That's a vulnerability that's in your app code that you can resolve.
Nice.
So that's the kind of feedback you're actually looking for too, right, Peter? Like right now, like is this tooltip or the overview that you're seeing in this tooltip, is that what you want to see as the developer? Or do you want it kind of broken down from a different viewpoint, I think?
Precisely.
Right. And I don't know if our dev advocates who are live with us today also have their own opinions that you might
Yeah,
want
like
to talk
please,
through, as
Ryan,
well
Brian,
as
share.
in the chat, please.
You know what?
Chat away.
One of the things that this reminds me of from GitHub, have you ever used a service called Greenkeeper? Have you heard of that one? No? Anyway, Greenkeeper will do analysis, I think, on your NPM JavaScript libraries.
Oh, cool.
And it'll tell you if there's a vulnerability, but it'll also send you a pull request to upgrade your modules. It's not guaranteed to work because you're upgrading to a new version, but it'll send you, if you type in npm upgrade module number, that'll get you to the next version, and you can basically merge it and move along. It'd be interesting to see some type of next action. I think going back to Quay.io for the specifics is really good. And I think some of the CVE reports do actually have advice on how to resolve or upgrade it, or at least usually upgrading often resolves these issues if there's a CVE reported.
So just to kind of segue for a second, someone asked Serena a question. Serena showed us a few weeks ago that you could pin stuff in 4.5 in the dev console. This is super useful to customize the sidebar, and I use it a lot, but I am forever switching between admin and dev to go back to the topology view. The topology view is like the homepage that I keep wanting to return to when doing stuff, and it's super frustrating that I cannot get to the topology view from the admin console.
Right.
Is there any thinking about adding topology/admin console customizability?
So I actually have a bunch of good tidbits on that one. So
Hmm.
first of all, there are conversations around what we're doing with navigation in general across the console for both the admin and the developer side for the future, like the longer term future. Good thing is that Ali Mobram, I think,
Yes.
is featuring a admin UI session Thursday. Maybe this week?
It is third. No, wait. Is it tomorrow? No.
Maybe you
Oh
can
my
double
gosh.
check.
Thursday
I
at
gotta
11.
search my
When that
calendar.
is.
Let me just search my calendar real quick.
Yeah, so if you could do
my
that.
calendar's a minefield.
So I think he's going to be having a monthly session around the admin console or something like that.
Thursdays at 11. Is that what I'm looking at? The future of OpenShift administration with PM and UXD. So
Yeah.
bring that question, ex-conspiracist. If you want to bring that question to us on Thursday, if you can, at 11 a.m. Eastern, 1500 UTC, Ali will take that and run with it. I guarantee it.
And
but
actually
we'll get it to him anyway, right?
Yeah,
Like,
and part of that session is all around, it's actually part of that session is going to be around customization of the console in general, not
Right.
only admin, but dev side too. So I think that would be a great place to bring it up. The other thing is that in 4.6, one of the things that we have done, and I probably can't show you at the second because I don't have a cluster available, but on the project page in the admin side, underneath the workloads tab, what you'll see is the list view of the topology view.
Mhm.
So I know that's not the same as customization for sure.
Right.
But the
But,
list view
yeah.
might give you some of what you're looking for. And it would be interesting to see if people really are looking for that graphical view over there on the admin side, because that's something that we've also been trying to think about. Should we bring that into 4.7? So
Awesome.
anybody who
Yeah.
has opinions on that, we'd love to see that in chat or anywhere else.
Anywhere else. Yeah.
Yeah.
Email, chat, wherever.
Yeah. So I think that's the larger view, as well as maybe what we can do in 4.6 and 4.7 for you.
Cool. Peter, you want to press on here?
Yeah, sounds good.
Awesome.
So yeah, so now we've taken a look at the list of vulnerable images, both base and app dependency vulnerabilities in this particular project. So this is breaking them down by severity. We have this, but just to show now the inclusion of the vulnerabilities tab. So if you click view all, that's another way to switch over to it. But what we're looking at here now is all the vulnerable images in this particular project, and some high metadata about them. So their severity level, the affected pods, the number of fixable vulnerabilities, and then once again, that same link out to the Quay.io UI. But clicking into that, so now we're in the details of this particular image manifest vuln as a resource that contains all this data. But similarly to what we saw in the existing cluster version of this, is we're now looking at the details of all the vulnerabilities that exist in this image. And of note again is that they contain both it should be base level vulnerabilities as well as the app dependency vulnerabilities. So this one count would be aggregating both of those, and you could break them down by severity. And then the thought is that we'd be able to filter between showing all of them, or just the base level vulnerabilities, or the app dependency vulnerabilities. And I guess I was curious, we have functionality like this in this bottom area that lets you list out all the vulnerabilities as well. You can filter by either base or app. And I guess I was just curious if anybody had any thoughts on if this type of functionality would be useful at this level to see one or the other, or just always see both. And then similarly in this list, the same question. Anybody have any thoughts on that? Definitely be interested in hearing them.
Yeah, Serena's curious why. I know his real name, Christian Santana, is switching back and forth between dev and admin views so much, and it looks like he's saying config map or secrets in the developer view. You can't see them. Is that actually the case?
That is actually, it's not, I think what he's probably saying, it's not that you can't see them, but they're not in the nav by default, right? So this
Right.
whole feature of being able to, which somebody had just brought up, that in 4.5 on the dev side, you can do a search for a secret, and then you can say, oh, I want to add that to my nav. I'm going to add the blog here in a second.
Sweet.
But once you're utilizing 4.5, you can customize your own navigation to do that. And that should help. And that's one, again, sorry, Peter, that we're off topic a little bit, but this is based on the chat. We are trying to figure out why are people switching back and forth between admin and dev perspective. And like, is it a wholesale issue, or is it that there are a few things that are missing? So again, all of this feedback, send an email to our Google group, come here, send something to the chat so we can figure that out and fix things. So.
Yeah, we want you to have a good experience, right? Like, and if you have a pain point and you're frustrated, let us know.
On topic, I do really like the ability to separate the base image vulnerabilities versus the app vulnerabilities. I think that having that ability to do that is really useful. I might be using an older version of, you know, the UBI or Alpine or whatever, and that's in my Docker file, and I could, you know, instantly see, oh man, that's like another check to make sure that I'm, you know, making sure that's updated and things are okay. And I think that's valuable. But maybe I can't change that base image because that's, you know, what we're using for most things. And seeing, oh, there's a couple different dependencies or, you know, app vulnerabilities. I like having the ability to switch that context really easy and have that, you know, to be able to see that really quickly.
That makes sense. Yeah. And we were playing with, like, even if maybe when you're in the dev perspective, maybe more highlighting, maybe like for example, like defaulting to showing the app dependency vulnerabilities by default, and then maybe a way to switch to see all of them, or as it's drawn here, just showing all of them by default, which is the way we're leaning at the moment. But yeah, definitely thinking about that type of thing.
Yeah, I think at least my perspective on which one should be default, I'm not sure. I think I would have to like use it for, you know, a month or whatever and see which one I use the most or what is the most valuable for me at least. But having it configurable at least, you know, so that people could switch is nice.
Yeah, for sure. Makes sense. Yeah, anywhere we can have user customization in the console, we're definitely interested in doing that type of thing. So that's a good point. It's a good use for it. But yeah, so just to get back into, so there's some of this other metadata. There's a link to the manifest on Quay one more time. And then there's the list of vulnerabilities at the bottom here, and kind of like what I touched on. So this would be the list of both the base and app dependency vulnerabilities. If you were just interested in one or the other, we would have a filtering mechanism, so you can see just the base or just the app, filter this list down. Again, the severity, and then the source, which would be based on probably the type where they're coming from. So if it's a base image vulnerability, it's probably coming from Quay, or if it is a app dependency vulnerability, it's probably going to be coming from Code Ready Dependency Analytics, which is powered by SNCC vulnerability data.
And if we have maybe like a third party or whatever that's feeding this in through the container security operator, maybe that will, you know, show up in that source list. Can you sort by each of these columns, or is it looks like it might be sorted by severity?
I think the way I've drawn this at the moment, I think it was sorted by severity, but I believe we could even go check right now. And I think that, so if we check one of these out, sorry. So I think these could be sortable. That's something we probably should do, because that would make a lot of sense. What I was going to say is it looked like we already have sorting on the list here in this moment. So it seems like we could just include that on the vulnerability list. That's a really good point.
Yeah, I could see, you know, maybe like you sort by package and see like, oh, there's a ton that are on here for SQLite. You know, we need to update that dependency, and that'll take out 10 out of 20, issues.
Yeah, getting these things resolved seems like that'd probably be the primary interest for a developer. So definitely whatever we can do to make that simple is sort of what we're after. And then the last column that we're thinking about adding here also is just the application grouping of which of these app dependency vulnerabilities fall in. So if you've used in the topology view to set up applications to group your different workloads, this would then tell you for this vulnerability which application or applications it's surfaced in. So that's something we're feeling out at the moment.
I really like that. I think if I were responsible for a particular app at my company, this view would potentially let me go and see what are the relevant security issues that I'm potentially on the hook for. And if it's as simple as the trick with some of this, though, is I think a portion of the time, the actual resolution might be upgrading an RPM or basically patching the base image. And that's potentially might not be within the scope of a front end developer. So I might have to put on my lead developer hat, grab my admin credentials or something, and rebuild that base image, and then do a Docker push into my internal registry or something. But I think I remember if you are still using deployment configs instead of deployments, I think, I'm not sure if it's different with deployments, but I think we will detect that a new base image has arrived in your registry. The build config that you have stored should automatically jump into effect, generate a new app image, and then your deployment config, if you have automation for that enabled, might actually roll out a new deployment as well. So you could essentially do a Docker push, flip back to this screen, and then watch as these things potentially get resolved. I'm not sure how quick the Quay analysis comes back through, but you know, this would be one place to look for as you close those issues.
Yeah, and I think that's some feedback we've been getting, is that almost it's as interesting to see what, I guess, what is vulnerable and is fixable, but it's almost as interesting to see like what's left after the fact, because that might be what you're interested in. And it also seeing these things resolved in real time would be great.
Yeah,
Peter,
yeah.
I wonder if you wouldn't mind again just going back to the developer perspective, because there's a question around, is this a list of vulnerabilities on everything in OpenShift or going into the application itself? So I know you talked about this before, but maybe we could just kind of go through a look, going on the differences between the admin side versus the dev side, and how that limits the focus, I guess, of the vulnerabilities. You know,
For the upcoming feature, that is.
yeah, yes, exactly.
Sounds good. Yeah, so the existing functionality is showing you all of the is showing you vulnerabilities for all the base images, whereas so now I make sure I got this correct. We're over in the developer perspective and we're looking at the project view, and what's new here is this image vulnerability status, and the contents of this image vulnerability status is not only those base images, which would have been already available in the cluster dashboard and the administrator view, but also these app dependency vulnerabilities are also combined into this. So it would contain not only the base image vulnerabilities, but also the app dependency vulnerabilities, all in this one view.
And it's only around the images that are used in this project, right? So anything on your
That's
app
right.
that's in this project that you're looking at. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, exactly.
You know how often that is going to refresh? Does it have a callback or something with Quay?
My understanding is that it's every 15 minutes was something that I've heard at least once. So that was my understanding.
It's probably good enough. Cool.
So one interesting thing, I wonder, just because of just thinking out loud here, since the title of that popover is the same between the two, I wonder if it is worth kind of clarifying it in the popover. So if you happen to have access to both the cluster overview and here, you're realizing that this is really just localized to the apps here. I don't know. And maybe you already do that and I'm not seeing it. So
yeah, I think that's actually a great point with as far as this thing as it's drawn here, it doesn't reflect any application level information. This is just across this entire project, Andrew. There's no mention of apps in this thing at this point. So I wasn't sure if that type of thing, if somehow from within this popover, you'd want to like break it down by app at this level, or if the assumption would be that you just go in here and then maybe once you're in a particular container image, then you can narrow it down to a particular app. But yeah, otherwise all this information is for this particular project, yeah, that we're looking at here. But yeah, probably indicating that in here would also be helpful, like project image vulnerabilities breakdown or something like that.
Yeah, I think the title like that makes sense, you know, project vulnerabilities or whatnot. But I think the pop-up, at least for me, probably, you know, I like the details, you know, there. I don't think that it needs to be broken down by apps. If we, you know, click view all, then you could get all the tweaks and filters and views that you want. But this is just like a quick overview. Hey, we got all these things. This is like a 20, we need to fix that one because that's a high, you know, issue, right?
I mean, this being on the first screen when you log in, right? Like this is a 20,000 foot view. That view all button gets you down at ground level kind of thing.
And yeah, so I guess one question that we also had that we alluded to earlier, but by listing out I believe this is the manifest ID for this particular container image, if it would be more useful to try to convey, I don't know, I guess the like repo name or the repo namespace and try to just capture like what this container image is, or I don't know if that information is useful here, or I guess I was curious if anybody had any thoughts on that type of thing. Just reflecting all this metadata in this small space was something we were trying to work out.
I feel like I probably agree with, yeah, showing like a more common name. Whenever I'm pushing an image, I'm probably not going to be working with the, the manifest ID. I'm going to be working with the tag or the name or whatever. And that's probably what I would want to see, I think.
You think, yeah, until you actually like put your hands
Yeah.
on it, you're not really going to know.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's helpful.
Christian Santana is asking, what about sidecar containers? Is there like, obviously we're scanning them, yes, but like, how would we say, oh, this sidecar needs an update? Like, same process, I'm assuming.
That I am not certain of, to be honest with you.
Okay.
Yeah.
If it's in Quay and, that's what it's getting,
Yeah.
that's what OpenShift's getting the image from, it probably would show up there, right? Like, but that's the thing, like you need to make sure that it's in Quay or whatever else is feeding into the container security operator, right?
Yeah, so Christian Santana is actually asking like images that are not mine, like Tecton or Istio or Envoy, right? Like, are those getting scanned too? The answer is yes. If you've configured it to be scanned, they will get scanned.
Christian Santana is actually Carlos Santana. He's
Carlos Santana, sorry.
same
Did I say
problem as
Christian?
Serena Doyle and Serena Nicholas.
Yeah, sorry. So I'm kind of medicated this morning, so I apologize. But yeah, Carlos Santana, I did it again. But like, he wants to know like that his sidecar app is not invulnerable, right? Like, because
Oh,
those
interesting.
sidecars are going to become more prevalent and more like, we're putting a lot of faith in Istio right now for security and management. So we need to make sure that those things are getting looked at in the same way our apps are, essentially.
Yeah, I think this is great feedback. And I think, Peter, maybe we should back to Parag. So Parag is our, I think he's like our security vulnerability PM, among other things that he does. But it would be great to bring this back to him and the team to make sure that this stuff is being covered appropriately and see if there's anything additional we need to do. So thanks for bringing that up.
For sure. Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, and Carlos is right. The service mesh ships with 0 vulnerabilities, but then, a week later, kaboom.
And I think maybe one last thing that I didn't really touch on with this design, just what it's conveying, is I think earlier in the current functionality, you can look at the Red Hat security advisory for that particular vulnerability. So that would still be there. But what's new is also for these app dependency vulnerabilities, we'd be linking off to SNCC, which is providing this vulnerability data. So you would get more information about that vulnerability here, everything that SNCC provides, which I believe also helps you figure out how to resolve that vulnerability.
That's pretty slick. I like it.
Cool.
Agree.
Carlos Santana wants notifications when there's high vulnerabilities found. I just don't want to visit the UI to find it. I want alerts.
That's great feedback. Yeah, that's actually something we started thinking about. Exactly like when we should expose that type of thing, I guess, what severity level. But yeah, that's an awesome point. Probably stick a notification in the notification drawer just saying you have a high or urgent or something like that. Ideally, maybe it's configurable level of when you want to be notified and in what way.
Trigger something alert manager. Maybe we can pre-bake that for him, kind of thing. That kind of deal. Yeah.
Or what they mentioned also, maybe a webhook, and maybe somehow that could integrate.
That webhook
if
then
we're doing
triggers the
GitOps,
fix. Yeah.
Yeah, that could go to GitHub or GitLab or whatever somehow.
Find your vulnerability and patch it. Yeah, like Tecton deal with it kind of deal. Yeah, that'd be fun. Waleed is asking, I would love to see an example for the 119 sidecar feature, but we don't have 119 baked into any OpenShift instances right now, right? It's not in 4.7, or is 119 4.7? I forget. I forget the Kubernetes matrix, but yeah.
I'm not going to remember off the top of my head either.
No. So, Waleed, we'll get to that when 119 is actually part of OpenShift. How about that? And I apologize for the dog. Family sound. So what else you got, Peter? Anything else?
That was a good bit of the new functionality we're thinking through for after 4.6. So yeah, if there's any other general comments or just how you like to resolve these vulnerabilities in general, this is sort of what we've designed so far, but just curious if this would meet your needs, like if this is really the way you'd want to see this data, or any other thoughts on this in general. Definitely open to. But this is most of what I wanted to show.
I just want to say that I love that we're showing some of this security vulnerability in the OpenShift console. It makes it really easy. It's really that, you know, nice view of everything. You have that 1,000-foot view on that dashboard. It's all, you know, baked in, integrated really nicely, which is cool.
It's our reminder that, like, it's not just dev and ops, right? Like, there's all kinds of stakeholders that have a seat at the table with OpenShift, right? Like, security is involved, you know, any kind of configuration management's involved, any kind of, you know, compute, storage, the whole 9 yards. It's all installed, so it's all part of the package of OpenShift, so it touches everybody. So yeah, we really appreciate this feedback. Hooks, extensions for DevOps, all those fun things are great.
Yeah, I thought the feedback on alerts was particularly good. Thanks for that.
Yeah, because I scour the web for alerts like that, and like for OpenShift to do it for me would be dope.
Yeah. Especially, you know, I prefer whenever possible that the alerts be actionable. If I get alerts that there's nothing I can do about, then I'm like, what, you know, it's extra noise I have to handle.
OpenSSL release coming soon. Damn it.
Yeah, exactly. Right. But yeah, I really like the other page we had with the app column. Not all of your containers may be labeled
with an app,
or your pods might be labeled appropriately, but assuming your application groupings have the appropriate labels, things that are sidecars should be part of a pod with the appropriate labels. They'd potentially show up in this view, and you know, as a part of that security scope of that application grouping. So if you had sidecars that were Istio or whatever, this would be potentially the place to see it. So great for visibility. I'm a little bit frustrated in the next step here. I'm a little bit aware of as a developer, depending on how front end I am, I may or may not have the appropriate permissions to update the base images in my cluster. On the other hand, the art of standardizing those base images so an entire team or an entire engineering org is all on like the same release of Python or the same, you know, like you almost want to do that as a administrative level move to standardize those base images. But you want everyone to be aware if their particular application code is at risk, right? So yeah, I like this. But yeah, I think there is an interesting split between developer and administrator, kind of an opinionated split that Red Hat has. And it's particularly trying to work along those goals of allowing some amount of standardization from an administrative side. But yeah, great stuff. Great added visibility.
Carlos Santana is asking, how would you apply that application label? Like, which annotation would they annotate?
That's a good question. It's kind of up to you. If you are using Odo or other things, you can automatically get some amount of labels applied. If you're using the OpenShift dashboard, we'll try to apply some labels. Usually when you are creating a new solution using the developer catalog, a lot of those solutions will already have a bunch of labels applied to them. That's also kind of like depends on who your team lead or your architect is. They should be helping decide what labels get applied to which apps, so people have a clear perception of what's within their scope of responsibility. Front-end developers might not be the people applying these labels. It depends on kind of where you're at on the YAML engineering scale, right? Applying labels is a more advanced YAML engineering. So if you're in that group of folks, if you're not in that group of folks, they're the ones to ask.
Yeah, so Carlos is actually asking, is it apps kubernetes.io/name or apps.kubernetes.io/part of?
The most basic one, you'll have a top level label that's just app equals and then the app name. So there's one here that says my app. Everything that's in the my app group would all have app equals my app. Within that, I think you can look at, there's like cloud native application bundles is one specification. There's other kind of there's a application working group that was active upstream in the SIG apps group, but we basically conform to the same labeling scheme that Helm charts and the rest of the cloud native space is using for app labeling. So I'm not sure. I don't have a link to a specific reference for that.
I was just about
I
to
can
ask,
find-
is there a
yeah.
reference for it? Yeah, because that
Yeah.
would be great for me just to like have that. Yeah, the SIG, well,
Couple
SIG
links.
apps, but there is a SIG app delivery in
Mhm.
CNCF, which is looking at this, I believe, more holistically.
Yeah, another, let's see. I know this is more of a, I think.
So there was a, I'm looking for it now. There was a label recommendation. I think it was initially Gorkum from our DevTools team had initially created that. And I'm pretty sure that it made it upstream. Just trying to see if I can find that. And that's what we utilize in the developer console today. So like if you're in the developer console today, we in the project selector bar, we also have an application selector bar. So you can, and when you're looking in topology, things are grouped as applications with like a larger circle around them. It's using that specific labeling mechanism or convention. So let me, you will give me a couple seconds and I'll find
Yeah,
it.
Ryan, can you please decipher what Carlos just wrote?
Let's take a look.
Sorry, Carlos.
Who would
Struggling.
have guessed applications in Kubernetes could be so complex with
Right.
labels?
It's just a lot of GVKs, and it's like bending my mind right now.
Yeah, I'm going back through the back scroll, and I see one from Carlos regarding app.kubernetes.io/part of. That's, I think, the longer form and probably older. I've seen that mostly just shortened to app equals and then app name. And that's kind of the newer shorthand for your top level grouping. There is usually a like part of representation that you can use in addition for subgroupings within the app. And I'm not totally clear what those are. I don't know if they're as long as this app.kubernetes.io. I think
Well, he's got an example here.
Yeah.
IBM Tech TV app, right? Like that's a great example. If that part of is defined, would we pick that up in this UI is the question. Probably not, right? At least not
Yes.
right now.
So Peter, do you have the console running there or is this just Marvel?
That was Marvel, but I do have a console up.
Would you mind trying to be a guinea pig?
Absolutely.
All right. Like,
I'm
There we
anticipating
go.
it.
Okay, cool. So go into a project that you're okay with creating something in. And then if you go to the add page, so you just do like, you can just go to samples pretty quickly, I think, and maybe pick Python and let's hope it works. And hit create. And then see what happens. You should see a sample. Yeah. So if you click on the Python sample, the inner circle. Yep. And then you should get the side panel on the right-hand side, go to the details tab. And you should see the labels there. Not super readable, but if you click edit, you will then see. So the app name is sample app in topology. So again, like what we're using in the developer console is sample app. So let's see, where does it show that? It is using part of here.
Part of.
So again, like in the developer console, that's what we're utilizing. We're automatically labeling things through that part of label.
And I wonder if that's
Yeah.
us covering our bases, or is there something more to that?
I
It's probably a best practice to label as much as possible.
yes, but I
obviously,
think there's two different. I think there might be a couple of different labeling mechanisms up for grabs, and I think we started with this, and maybe this is a topic we can come back to another week. I can do a little bit more investigation. Yeah.
yeah, some of this is left over from the 3X days. Okay, thank you, Carlos.
Well, I think the new. Here's. I'm gonna add a link in here if I can find my window
These
again.
are label name standards, Nurendev asks. Yeah, there's some standards for labels. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure.
So I just added a link to the application labels standard that we're using inside the console. So
this is actually something I'm going to save to my references right now.
Probably not a bad topic for us to come back to another day, though.
Yeah,
Because I do
absolutely.
know, like, if I'm not mistaken, there might be some contradiction with maybe another product around in the portfolio or something that we can do some investigation, share back with.
Yeah, yeah.
So this would also be something that whoever the team lead of this Python sample would be responsible for maintaining these over time and ensuring that the appropriate labels are applied given the environment. I think so often our sample apps sometimes are used across, OpenShift 3 examples and we test for backwards compatibility. So this might have a boatload of labels to cover extra use cases. But yeah, good to see this. Thanks again for doing the live demo during the show. This is great to have a real answer to this question.
Yeah, and also the other thing is, Peter, if you go back to add and hit samples again, so just what that samples area is doing is it's just a quick way for developers to get up and start, like, kick the tires, right? If you add another one, so say pick Java possibly, I'm hoping that they all work. I haven't tested today. So if you create that, what ends up happening is that will also get added to the same sample app, right? So their Python sample and your Java sample have now been added to the sample app. We're doing that through that add samples flow. Again, just so that if there's developers who are just trying to kick the tires, they're able to come in here, quickly add samples, but then also be able to quickly delete them, because you can then click on that application itself and then delete the entire application through the
There's
app.
also a option menu that has additional linkages, right?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And those also will manipulate the labels, I believe. So
yes.
That's another way to get those kind of labels applied without you having to learn every last bit of knowledge about the Kubernetes ecosystem and be involved in every SIG and be up to date on what did the working group decide regarding what the correct labeling. Instead, you click on the option button, click on link, and hopefully we give you the appropriate label, at least for OpenShift, if not for the rest of the Kubernetes community.
Exactly. Cool. All right. We are all into labels now. You get a label, you get a label, I get a label, you also get a label, LOL. Nurendev says everyone gets a label. But yes, like Carlos Santana, I mentioned in chat, like, please reach out to me and let's figure out who should run that standard and actually make it like a thing, because clearly there's some ambiguity there that needs to get cleaned up at a grander scale than just Red Hat or any individual company, right? Like let's see who can come up with a global standard for us. Oh, and Serena says don't forget about annotations. Yeah, big one.
Yeah, well, nobody has yet.
Yeah. Awesome. All right. So Serena, what are you thinking the next time you're on? What do you think? Any ideas
Well, I
what
think
you're talking about?
I think Ryan, do we have a topic for next week?
I have one somewhere in a doc among the giant like 15 different docs
Okay.
on my desktop,
Right.
and I'm not sure if I could find it currently.
All right. Well,
You're
I
cool,
can
dude.
talk
You're
about
fine.
2 weeks from now.
Yeah, let's talk about 2 weeks from
Excellent.
now.
Yeah.
Okay,
The future
so-
returns.
Yeah, so actually, as I mentioned earlier, Ali Mobram is going to be with the admin side this week, and he's talking about customization of the console. And then when I am, or when we are here in 2 weeks, what we'll be talking about again is customization of the console. But how is the developer experience customized through the console? And then we're also talking about introducing kind of a competition around who can customize the console, and trying to create a little competition around different people's ideas and how to utilize the mechanisms we have today. So definitely join Ollie's session, and then in 2 weeks, please join me, and whoever else wants to come would be great.
And we'll be back
all the cool
here
things
with
we can do.
Ryan and the team
Yeah,
of developer advocates
like
next week. Yeah.
We tentatively have Jason Dobies coming back with how do
Sweet.
developers learn. I think he was going to go through kind of our best of, demo of learn.OpenShift, talk about the probably mention his book, go through kind of top opportunities that the OpenShift developer program is already offering.
Do you mean the operators ebook that you can get for free by going to red.ht/operators ebook?
That very book. And in fact, not only does everyone in chat get their very own label, but you also get your very own opportunity to download your own copy of this ebook.
It's good stuff. It really is. Like, I do reference it routinely. Yeah. So thank you very much, everyone, for joining. Appreciate your time. Thank you, Peter. This is a great demo, as always. Thank you for indulging our chat audience. And we do love you all and all of your questions and feedback. It is very helpful. I cannot tell you how helpful it is. So we really appreciate it. You're making the product better as you're getting involved here on the channel. So we cannot thank you enough for that. Anyone else want to say a quick shout out before we sign off?
Stay tuned for Commons today, right?
Yeah, Commons is coming up next. We're talking about Helm and using all the fun bits of Helm inside of OpenShift. Blech, I don't know why that came out so slow. All
They
right.
should be using the same labeling scheme. You can ask them if you stick around.
Oh God, TBD.
Hijack comments, talk about labels all day.
Have a good day,
all right,
everybody.
good stuff, everybody. Thank you.
Thanks all. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks.